Bayyinah Bello, and my passion is artistry. My mission is to work towards the well being of our people collectively. And as we study artistry, we become aware how much artistry is, well, I say artistry instead of his story, history. So, artistry, because I look into the contribution of women to many situations where they just talk about the men. I look into the contribution of civilians, of children, of elders, because in a society you have everyone, and nothing can really happen without everybody contributing to it. So, this is why I usually refer to the word that you know as history, I refer to it as our artistry, because everyone has contributed, though it is often written with a lot of us excluded. So, artistry is the backbone of any society. No matter what field you take, you say, okay, I'm interested in tech. There's no history there. No, no, no. There's a place where it started. There are those who created the very first computer, the very first telephone, and then this generation, that generation, that generation. So there's a whole artistry as to how the telephone came to be or the laptop. I remember my first laptop. It was advertised as the lightest and it weighed 40 pounds. Now, even a 3 pound laptop may look a little too heavy for me today. Excuse me. So, as we study our history, it enables us to look back, understand what happened, and it permits us to comprehend the present. Without a knowledge of what has gone before, we don't understand the present. So, as a woman, I look into some of the women that were before me. As a professor, one of the professors that I came across was in the 5th century, Professor Hypatia in Egypt, who was teaching mathematics. And when the Euro Christians arrived at the University of Alexandria, they were shocked to see women professors. So most of them were killed. And Hypatia was such, she refused, since she was refusing to convert to Christianity, not only was she killed, but she was dismembered and even her flesh removed from her bones. So I realize some women have done great sacrifices in order for us today to be teachers. Of course, that's a long time ago, but all the way we can find teachers, female teachers, who have had to fight in order to have the positions that they should be in. And it's just not just in teaching. We're talking about tech. How many of you know Dr. West? Probably most of you don't. But you're using what she created, the GPS, all the time. She is the Black woman who created the GPS. Most of us are totally unaware of that. So it's important for us to take the time and look at what has happened when we are interested, especially in a field. It's good to look back, see who else was in that field and what they accomplished. That way, you'll have a better understanding of where you stand today, and you will have a greater ability to carry on, because life is continuity, to carry on so you can see what it is you can add to what is there now so you can make something better for tomorrow, which is what we all hope for all the time. Better doesn't mean faster. Better does not mean bigger or brighter or whatever. We have to really define better. What makes life better? It's not going faster. It certainly is more human in my book. Developing more of our humanity will make us develop instruments and equipments that serve men rather than compete with men. So, since I mentioned women in archery, I will mention one woman in Haiti. Many of you usually pronounce Haiti as Haiti, which is not proper. The correct way to pronounce the name of my country is Haiti. It's an Arawak word. And the very first woman that the Euro Christians found there at the head of the island is a woman called Anakauna. And that woman fought against Euro Christian invasion for 10 years. She did not give up. While many of the men had given up, she maintained the fight for the longest, and she did more for her people in trying to protect them from European savagery. So, if we don't know the history, it's difficult to plan the future. And the last example I will give is about medical. When you go to a good doctor, the first thing he wants to know is your father alive? Is your mom alive? They died? What did they die of? What are they suffering from? So he's doing your medical artistry. He's figuring out what are the illnesses you're most likely to fall into. And so with that questioning you, the doctor comes to see, okay, this is somebody who might be diabetes, it might be a heart problem, it might be this. So before your symptoms, the history of your family, of the medical history of your parents, your sisters and brothers and aunts, the close family, tells the doctor more about your medical possibilities. So, any questions?
So I would say one of the really interesting things to me is that when you're talking about the name of the country being pronounced ID,
Mhm,
and for me, come from the U.S., never hearing the proper pronunciation, we pronounce it as Haiti.
mhm,
Um, I guess sometimes when I meet people who are from Haiti, or sorry, from Haiti, and then they pronounce it Haiti here, would you say that's more just kind of an English adaptation, or is it more, would you say is that they've just learned to just simply say Haiti because we don't know it's supposed to be called Heidi?
Well, many people, even from IT, do not know the proper pronunciation. And most people tend to think that if you change the language, then you should change the pronunciation. But proper names don't work that way. If a proper name is from, for example, I know many Haitians whose name is Jean. And but when they come here, people call them Jean. But Jean is a female name.
Mm,
Jean is a masculine name. So it makes a very big difference to be called Jean rather than Jean. Most of us are not, we don't have enough courage often, or even very much unaware. We're not conscious, in fact. We are often lacking the conscious to make somebody take the time and say, no, my name is pronounced this way. When you say something else, you're not calling me. Okay? My own name, my first name is written with two Y's and an I. Some people think they might write it Baina. I will not respond to that letter. And I will correct every time. This is not me. You wrote a letter to so and so. Me, this is the way my name is written. So, because each thing has its importance, and the personal things as well as the collective, and it takes a lot of the personal to value the collective. So we have to respect, and the name of a country is very important, though some people think whatever way they say it, that's it. No, I do not repeat after those who do not know. I repeat what I know. I say what I know. So it's important for us to, whatever, if a Chinese name is a Chinese name, I'm not going to mispronounce the person's name. I'm going to do all I can to pronounce it the way the person says their name is.
all right.
And very important. Maybe we'll say, since we talk about IT, we'll give a little bit of a history from IT. Again, many people are totally unaware that Haiti was first created in 1804 with the first land where the people rose and stopped slavery. And in order to do that, we fought against the Spanish army, we fought against the British army, we fought against the French army. So we had to beat three European forces in order to become independent. So in 1804, January 1st, Haiti became independent. And we created in 1805 the Empire of Haiti, Empire of Freedom. And we structured the empire in such a way that anyone who is in slavery want to get out of it. If you can manage to get to Haiti, then we will make sure you stay free. So a lot of people came to Haiti in the early days. There was one cases of a boat of 300 Jamaicans who took a boat away from Jamaica to get away from slavery. And when the British Army came to say, you have my possession, you have to give it back, we said, no. In here, there are no people that are possession to anybody else. Everyone who is here is free. And so the British had to go about and leave it alone because those Jamaicans stayed in Haiti, became citizen, and. So, and there were many cases, Jews also during the Second War, European War. I know they call it World War, but hey, they decided on themselves. They were the ones whose interest it was. I had nothing to do with it. It's not a world war. It was a European war. So the Second European War, there were a lot of Jews who had problems. IT produced passports and sent to Jews who were in trouble to help them to get out of difficult situations so they wouldn't be killed in some many cases. So Haiti has always been a country that tried to come up with solutions when it comes to people coming out of slavery or situations where people are not treated in a human way.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say I didn't even know that I didn't even know about the Jamaicans escaping to ID. And then I had heard about a bunch of Jews trying to escape Europe. And I remember hearing about them. They would sail around Canada, the US, and the Caribbean trying to find a place to stay. I guess how, aside from the revolution, how did that, how did these people realize that they could visit it, or not just visit, but escape to Haiti as a place to, to find freedom?
Well, I suppose that even before internet, before cell phones, people had ways to know what was going on because, and we know also that the U.S. spent millions of dollars trying to make sure that African Americans here don't get to know about Haiti being a free land nearby. And but in spite of that, many African Americans came and participate. Some participated in the revolution, and in the first two governments of Haiti, there are African Americans member of government. There is our first printing house. It was a man from Sudan who left the Sudan, came an African man, and came to Haiti and established a printing press. So there were many people from many different places once they knew that Haiti existed. So how they got to know, I don't know. But I suppose newspapers, word of mouth probably is the most powerful thing at the time, I would tend to believe. As a boat would stop at different ports, people talked and shared information, and I would assume.
Yeah. And what you mentioned, to me, it seems to contrast a bit with Liberia, which well, if I remember correctly, it was formed. Basically, there were a lot of freed slaves from the U.S., and then they were sent to the piece of land that is now known as Liberia.
Mhm.
How does their history, how does it contrast with the story for Haiti?
Okay. Liberia is a creation of the United States. United States did not, when the US wanted to get rid of black people. So they offered to black folks to come onto this journey on a boat where they would take them back to Africa. But most of the people here had no idea what is Africa, where it is, what goes on there. So people were not that keen on going back to some place that they did not know. But anyway, some did want and some did go, and many were sort of forced also. So when they got there, and there wasn't a structured space, when they got there, the people on the coast, seeing those boats arriving, started to fight. They didn't want those boats because they had heard of you Christians boats arriving different places and putting people into slavery. So they wanted to fight and they started to fight with whatever weapons they had.
Mhm.
So at some point, the boat folks sent smaller boats with so called gifts, and in many cases, killed a lot of people. And that's after they did this killing that they brought the boat closer and brought the people onto that space, which is why, up until today, Liberians who have names like Taylor and Johnson, and Liberians who have African names often don't get along
Mhm.
because the African people feels that those who have come with the boat with the Euro American names, these they kill the people on the coast in order to come in. So it's a very different situation, and that's why the war there is not over. And also part of it, I believe, is because the art history is not properly told. There are versions of what happened, how it happened, that does not make everyone be clear as to what happened and why. So there are a lot of things people act on, things that are inside of them, but it's not clear on a conscious level. So that's why you have a lot of unrest in these areas.
All right. And then with IET, I'm aware that, and I took Spanish in high school, so I'm probably saying this wrong, but uh, Toussaint Louverture.
Yes.
I don't know if I said that right because I
You
don't know French.
said it right. To c'est l'ouverture. Yes.
Okay, Toussaint Louverture. Uh, but so we often know that the uprising was it wasn't just a few people. It was a lot of the slaves saying we want freedom, we want equality, and he
Mm-hmm.
became the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the creation of the nation, a lot of the focus was on creating a very equal society.
Right. So
And where
to
did
say
that idea come from for him?
Well, I cannot say that the idea come from him, but I will say that the idea started to take a very general organizing form from him.
Hmm.
But actually, people like Macandal, people like Bookman Duty, people like Grand Pelagie, a lot of others from in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, you have people fighting for freedom in Haiti. But when we got to Toussaint as a leader, the fighting had a more important organization. For example, Toussaint had troops of 20 to 25,000 people.
It's quite big.
Whereas, yes, whereas when we're talking about someone like Macandal, he would do he would have troops of 20, 30, 50, 100 people.
Mhm.
So yes, he fought, and but the structure that Toussaint brought in, and then Toussaint also had the advantage of he had been in the Spanish army, so he
Oh,
knew. Oh yes, he was first in the Spanish army. Then he left the Spanish army, came into the French army, and each time he switched from French to Spanish or Spanish to French, he would get a higher rank. He would negotiate a higher rank. So at one point, he is general of the French army. So he has a
wow.
lot of information, a lot of weapons, a lot of everything at his disposal. So
Mhm.
he's going to make some very interesting moves to, at the same time, being in the French army and fighting against the French. You have to do it.
That's
So,
remarkable. He was able to switch army to army, move
yes,
on up, and continue to thrive in his situation.
absolutely.
Wow.
Right. So, and when the French captured Toussaint and took him to France and killed him, Dessalines rose. He was Toussaint's right arm.
Mhm.
So he rose to the top. And he is the man who's going to take us to independence. So he made even larger army denominations. But he had a specific, one of his keen thing is that Dessalines liked, if you're 20,000 men coming at him, he wants to beat you with 15,000. His specialty was to
Mhm.
beat you with a smaller troop than what the enemy had.
Wow. Did he serve in the Spanish or French armies too, or he just
And he
learned all
was with,
this?
when he was with Toussaint, wherever Toussaint was, he was there too.
Oh, okay. So on the ground training right there.
Yes. And when Toussaint was no longer present, then Dessalines was the man. And he brought us to victory.
Okay. Are there other notable figures?
Another element, important element, he was trained and educated by a military woman from Dahomey, Akbaraya Toya, who
Mhm.
had been in the Dahomeyan army, because in Dahomey, since the first century, they have a female army and a male army. They don't mix people for fighting.
Oh, wow.
Women army, male army separate. Each had their task. So this woman was from the female Dahomeyan army, and she is the one who raised Dessalines and
Mhm.
trained him and taught him that freedom is the way. So he has to go all the way to freedom.
Yeah.
And he did.
Okay. And that's part of why, uh, after Toussaint was brought to France and killed, he completed the mission essentially.
Exactly. So,
And then from there, he said, we need to set up a free and equal society. And I guess, how do they go about creating the government?
well, the first quality is, what was your contribution to freedom? You couldn't become somebody in government because you knew how to speak French well or Spanish well or whatever. But if you're going to be part of government, you're going to be at the head of government, then you're going to examine your contribution to freedom. And so that's why Dessalines was the number one person, because his contribution is unquestionable.
Mhm.
But the other thing too, we did not, in our first, as I mentioned earlier, in our first government, nobody could say, well, IT is just created. So there are no Haitians and non-Haitians. Everybody who's there is part of the nation.
Yeah.
So there were some people from Europe who had left the European army and joined Dessalines' army. So we had Polish, there were some Swiss, there were some Czechoslovakian people, because the Napoleon's army, remember, Napoleon is all over Europe warring. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
when he sends an army abroad, it's made up of all the different countries that he had overcome.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh,
why all these different people. So when they understood what the Haitians were fighting for, some of them say, "Oh, forget about Napoleon. I'm joining here. This is freedom."
yeah. I'm sure they also appreciate the weather.
Yes, that's for sure. Weather is generally pleasant tonight. Yes.
And I know this is a little separate, but I would like to point out that a lot of the agriculture in Haiti, the fruit, the food, it's a very abundant place, which I imagine that explains why initially the French wanted to hang on to it.
In fact, we could say it explained why all the Europeans wanted to own it.
Yeah.
So the French and the Spanish warred each other for over 100 years for the island.
Oh, wow.
Yes, until in 1675, they agreed to split it into two colonies. The French would have the western side, and the Spanish would keep the eastern part. Then the British tried to take it over. So
Yeah.
even the Dutch tried to get it too.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, a lot of warring over that land. And yes, it is a very abundant land. It is a land at home we can have easily three harvests of most things.
Wow.
Things, the most more needed things in 3 months, 4 months, something is grown. You plant and you harvest 4 months later. We also have a very varied temperature. In less than 10 minutes, if Port-au-Prince is too hot for me, I'd take my car, and 50 minutes later, I could be in Boutillier, where I'm 15 degrees cooler. I go up
Yeah.
the mountain, I get into a nicer, more comfortable, if I want less heat, it's easy. If I want to be cold, I want to wear sweaters, then I could go higher. So there's a variety of temperature, variety of food. In fact, Haiti is the second country with the largest uh, type of mangoes after China.
Oh, wow.
China has the largest types of mango. The Haiti is the second country.
Wow. And that's, you know, it's not a lot of land compared to China, and to have all the varieties,
Mhm.
produce that much.
Yes.
That's impressive. So I guess now that we look at ID today, it still has that history, the our story. It's a very proud origin. Um, but we're also, we also know with some of the natural disasters, it has struggled in recent times. I guess, what do you see as a path forward for the nation?
All right. I think the world looks at this quite wrongly. I don't believe there are such thing as natural disasters.
Mhm.
I believe we are all part of this creation. So, wind has its rights, hurricanes have its rights, earthquake has its rights, and everything that is part of life will come to whatever space that it's supposed to come in cycles, right?
Mm.
So, if I decide I want to build my house in the riverbed because there's no water there now, okay, that's fine. But whether in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, the river will come back.
Mm.
So then when I'm in a situation, well, I lose my children, blah, 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 it's not the river's fault. It's not a disaster. This is something I created. Because as a human, I'm supposed to know this is a riverbed. And riverbeds are not where you build your houses.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think because we've not studied the world the way it should be and giving the respect to every life form, we create these kind of situations. But when we look at the Arawak people, the Siboney, these people, they knew exactly that Every 22 years, there's this. Every 42 years, there's this. So you're not going to find them counting dead people because they will take, they took the right decisions as to where they live, where they have this, where they have that, according to what they know will happen. It's like volcanoes. Volcanoes are very important forms of life form, but I can decide to go build my house on top of the volcano or at the bottom of it, the volcano, the mountain, put my house at its feet. When the lava comes, it will take me.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in this natural catastrophe, but I believe that today, excuse me, there is so much arrogance in the way we look at the world. We do not make the proper planning. No, even when you look at a place like Gonaive, there are mountains, 80% mountains on top, and you put a town there.
Yeah.
So when there's a lot of rain, what do you expect? That base that you have built, well, will be full of water regularly. And regularly, the inundations happen, and each time they rebuild the same place the same way. No, we need to look at the world differently and take better decisions.
Yeah. So I guess for the future of ID, part of it is, like you said, to view the world properly, to better understand what has happened, what will happen, what's the cycle, and
Mhm.
then adapt to that rather than saying you adapt to us.
Exactly, which will not happen. Earthquake will not adapt.
Yeah.
um, Hurricanes will not adapt. We just have to know this is their course, this is the places where they're going to be. So, those places, we cannot put cities, we cannot put schools and hospitals there.
Hmm. Yeah.
The Arawak had a practice. No city should have more than 3,000 people. So,
Mm.
once the population rose to 2005, they would send a team of pioneers to go look for another space to create a new town.
Yeah.
So the population control was well handled on the Arawaks. So these are things we could learn from that, if you have, because today we have cities that are not run because, there's too many people for the amount of water, for the amount of food, for the garbage disposal, for all of that. So it has to be controlled. So we have to make better plans with respect for every life form.
Mm. And I think it's interesting the stuff you mentioned just now with the hurricanes, they go where they want. We just need to know where they're going.
Mhm.
It's kind of like human nature to say, I want to have a good life. I want freedom. I want to be who I am and not, in the case of pre-revolution ID, to
Mhm.
be a slave. In the case of today, to be able to say, here is the purpose and the mission I'm here for. Here is what I'd like to do. Here's my passion. A lot of it is human nature saying, this is what I want, and this is what's good for the community, and finding that balance.
Exact. In fact, Desolation, who was a fine dancer, loved to dance. And when the French sent the troops in 1802, the French General Rochambeau said he would take Desolation first because he know this guy loves to dance, so he's gonna take him while he's dancing on a Friday night, Saturday night. And after a while, I found a memo that he wrote to his troops. Do not try to take Desolane on the dance floor. He is more dangerous on the dance floor than on the battlefield. Do not attack him there anymore.
Yeah.
Okay? But Desolane is a man who says, dancing is my passion, but
Mhm.
I put my passion at the service of my mission.
Mm.
Freedom is my mission. So, what he did not know, Desolane had a dance created that you dance with weapons. So
Mm,
you stay in the military form mentally. So you will never, even though you look like you're having fun, but the fun is never supersedes the mission. The
yeah.
mission is always at the heart of the fun. So that's why they couldn't catch him.
And I think that's a great metaphor for all the students and participants when they watch this to understand that there's a lot of things they believe in, there's a lot of things that they want, but they have to first identify their mission and then make sure their passions support that. Whether it's saying, here's tech and entrepreneurship to support civil rights, whether it's saying, I believe in art and music. Okay, great. In the end, what is your mission? Is it civil rights? If so, how do you take all of this and support that? And if it's something else, then do you know what your mission is? Can you take your passions and support that mission, not just for yourself, but also for the community?
Absolutely. And that's the key thing we have to understand. Um, the collective has priority on the individual. And once we leave that principle, then we have chaos.
Mhm.
We in every society, the collective has priority. It might be what I want to do, that's fine. But if it's not good for my community, then I have to look for something else
Yeah.
because the collective is more important.
Yeah. And that's why we have Black History Month, because at one point, people said we need to start coming together, we need to start acting together, and they stayed together and fought to overturn a lot of the Jim Crow laws, a lot of the unjust laws and policies, which now, for me being, despite not being of African descent, I'm able to enjoy a lot of what everyone else enjoys, or at least hopes to enjoy, because there was a different group that said, we're going to come together and we're going to do this for the collective, and I get to benefit from that as well.
The Black History Month, which started first as a day of History Month, and then grew into a week of History Month of Black History, and then grew into a month of Black History. It is what was necessary to bind us together, to help us to understand this is where we come from, and we are here now. So we now have a better way of looking at why we're in the condition we're in and what to do to change that condition. So to go into the future. So, yes, Black History Month is very important. And we need in the tech world, I think there is a necessity to identify the contributions of Black women and men to the various components of the tech world, let's say, because there is generally in this society, there is the presumption that anything that is created by someone else. And we also have a whole history of we create, African Americans create something, and then a white person takes the credit in all the books and everywhere. Like everybody talk about Edison creating the bulb. Not true. But he's the one who patented and got a lot of credit for that. So it's important, I think, that in the tech world, that you identify who did what. And that way, young African American children will understand that, oh, yes, this world is also my world. We've created a lot of things there. So, oh, so and so did the GPS. Oh, Dr. West did the GPS. Then I'm going to do this and that. It makes you immediately feel that you can. It gives you that power. So it's important, I think, that during this period in particular, that we identify who did what
Yeah.
in the world. And many of us will be surprised.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And thank you for telling us all this. I realize we've gone a bit over time from the original intention.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't want to just cut it off right away. So, do you have anything you'd like to leave the students with? Any last words of thought?
Yes. I will say the first thing for anyone, any age, whether you're woman or man, young or old, is to trust in yourself. Know that within you, each one of us have something very special that we can bring to the world. But if we don't trust ourselves, if we don't like ourselves, if we don't see ourselves as capable, then that thing will stay there and we will die with it.
Hmm.
What we need is that everyone gets into the understanding that you have something particular to bring to the world and that the world needs it. So trust yourself, give yourself the means, put in the effort, because nothing comes easy. They want to give us an idea that everything is easy and simple and quick. No, 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 no. Everything takes time. Uh, I have put in 35 to 40 years of research, which enables me today to speak about things without having a paper, but it's a lot of work. And the
Hmm.
same is true for any area. So do trust yourself and love yourself, and then bring to us what you have for the world. We will be happy. Thank you very much. And you'll make the world a better place for all of us.
All right. Thank you, Professor Bello. And for anyone who wants more of this, if you want to read more about what she studied, just maybe even connect with her. We'll leave some information below in the video description. And
Mm-hmm.
we hope that this has been a great time for everyone. We hope that this is really informative, educational, and inspiring. Definitely the examples of Toussaint and Desolation. Hopefully this serves as an example for you as you build what you're doing. And as mentioned before, we will leave some of Professor Bello's contact information in the video description below. So please feel free to reach out to her and contact her. We hope that this has been a great time for you, and we look forward to hopefully bringing Professor Bello back in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. And have a great, wonderful day, week, month, Black History Month.
Yes, happy Black History Month indeed.